When you're trying to track files down on your Mac, it's important to note that there are two distinctly different window types. As we already know, pressing Command N opens a standard Finder window, and pressing Command F will open a fresh new search window. And if you noticed, I clicked on the desktop to bring this Finder window out of focus before pressing Command F, like so. And having done so, when I press Command F, a fresh new window opens. Had I not clicked on the desktop and kept this Finder window in focus, this window will have converted into a search window when pressing Command F, like so. A standard Finder window will also transform into a search window as soon as you make an entry in this field. And when you enter a word here, the data that immediately populates your search window will either be files that include that word in their title or has that word nested within its content. And this drop-down that appears as you type allows you to narrow the search term to the file name only. So as I click, it may be subtle, but you'll see a little bit of a shift over here as I narrow the search to name only. And as we can see here, any term that's entered in this field is a defined condition that files must match up with in order to display in your search results. So make certain that this term that you initially set is in agreement with any future criteria that you might be adding down here. The key features that separate a Finder window from a search window is this strip right here, which in turn displays this strip, and this path bar down here. And the path bar isn't very descriptive until you select a file and light things up. Search and Finder windows both have a path bar, but the visibility of a path bar is fixed in a search window, whereas the visibility of a Finder window path bar can be toggled on and off. This highlighted marker denotes which folder you were in when you initiated your search. And the more targeted your folder location, the better, as a narrowed down search filters out any unnecessary files to sort through. And as this initial term that I entered, cover, led me to the folder I was actually looking for, this cover art, I can filter out all of this other stuff in this window, which there's quite a bit of. And when I open this folder by double clicking, our search window here is going to convert back to a Finder window. And now in here, our list is pretty short, so pretty easy to pick out what I'm filtering through, but say that it was a long list. What I would do again, if I had a long list here and I needed to search again, is press Command F, and again our Finder window would transform back to a search window. And then I would add another term, and I'm looking for a cover, so I'll type that in, and you can see that that filters through. So what if, after reestablishing a term in this particular folder, when it's all said and done, what you're looking for actually isn't in here? This is where our toolbar arrows come in really handy. You can just click and backtrack. In this particular search so far, we've made a relatively general pass by setting this one term here. The next steps would be to set criteria that's a bit more granular. And this strip allows us to do just that. In here you can set criteria in two different ways, by adding AND conditions or by adding any conditions. To toggle from AND conditions, which are denoted by this plus symbol, to any conditions, you press down the Option key and click this ellipses. When you set AND search conditions using the plus symbol, you're setting exclusive parameters in which a file must match all conditions in order for it to display. And when you set any search conditions using the ellipses, you're setting inclusive parameters in which a file can match any condition in order for it to display. Having set my very first term up here in the entry field, I can already see what I'm trying to retrieve. But let's just say that the needle's still in the haystack, and so let's do a hypothetical search using these AND and any statements, and we'll get a fresh start here. And so I know that my file includes the word cover in the file name. And another thing I'm certain of is that the file was created in Adobe Illustrator, so that's a definitive AND statement. And so I'm going to come over here, and I'm not seeing extension over here, so I can go into other and have other choices besides these for setting terms. So in this other, I'll rifle through, and I'm pretty sure there's a file extension in here someplace. Here we go. So when I select that, hit OK, and go back to my search terms, we have a file extension. And now if I put in the extension AI for Illustrator, I can already see the files that I'm looking for with just entering 2 terms. But looking at these files, I'm remembering that I created the artwork in Illustrator and then I shipped it off to Photoshop for texturizing. So I also need to track down the Photoshop files. And with this term being a definitive AND statement, were I to set an any statement, so I'm going to press down the Option key to make a any statement. Say that I set this to file extension. This AND, which is a must match, is negating this any can match. A file cannot be both, obviously, so let's kind of mix things up here. I'm going to come over here and set another any statement and say it can also be an AI file. And here you can see that it must be and it can be, so I'm getting my Illustrator files back, but this is still negating the Photoshop file. And this is a little bit of an overkill, but you can see how the AND statements might negate the any statements. So let's switch things up here. I'm going to change this. I know now that the file begins with RICM, so let's change this to name contains RICM. And now we get everything we're looking for. And if I really wanted to pinpoint things, I can use these column view list heads to sort by date, by name, kind, size, and so on. And I can see here that this is the file that I'm looking for right here, the high resolution texturized Photoshop file. So I'm going to highlight that. And if I look down below, having highlighted it, I can see exactly where it is. And then to just verify, I can hit the space bar with this highlighted to preview the file. Now this rather short journey was an evolution of sorts, and as I tried different AND and any statements, my original term up here happened to remain in agreement. But just as my Adobe Illustrator term up here, before I changed it to RICM, was negating the Photoshop term, the same would apply up here. So say that I started my query with book as in book cover. You can see that that term would negate anything that I followed up with down here. So just remember that any terms you set up in the search entry field is part of the equation. Having been able to pinpoint my files, I can save this query by pressing this button. And what that does is save a smart folder inside of my library. And smart folders is a topic that warrants a dedicated video, so stay tuned for that. So I'm going to cancel out of this. And so again, we were successful in tracking down our files. But what if all of our sleuthing in this more targeted marker just wasn't cutting the mustard? We might throw out a wider net and broaden our search by clicking on this MAC marker. And to illustrate how much broader that search range would be, let's lose these and in any terms. And with the drive being selected as the targeted marker, this is the range of items to filter through, as opposed to this much shorter range of items to filter through using the documents marker. But sometimes it is necessary to throw out a wider net. And just a quick FYI, that in the Finder Preferences Advanced tab is this pull-down menu, which works in tandem with these options up here. It's best to just leave this at the current folder, and when you do need to broaden your search, you simply click on this button. So as you can see, there's a bit of deductive reasoning involved in making file searches. But macOS gives you a pretty flexible offering of terms that will ultimately help you track things down. And while we're talking about making macOS searches, note that Spotlight is another powerful option. Not only does Spotlight help you to pinpoint things on your computer, it also goes online and Googles things for you. You can summon Spotlight by clicking on this icon, or by pressing the Command and Spacebar keys. In the Spotlight section of the System Preferences panel, allows you to choose from a broad range of search criteria. When we enter our cover term here in Spotlight, it's no coincidence that the cover that we just found elsewhere popped up on the very first pass. Spotlight filtered through and then displayed the most recently selected file that matched up. And as we scroll down, we can see that Spotlight displays anything that matches up with a cover term just like the search window did. But it takes things further by making a few online suggestions as well. And just like the search window, Spotlight has a path bar which is toggled into view by pressing the Command key. And if you click on this Show All in Finder bar, Spotlight will open a window so you can grab your files. And when you can see yourself repeatedly having to grab the same file, tags will allow you to do so at breakneck speed. So I hope you'll tune into the tags video, and I thank you for watching this video. See you soon.